behavior of the day was to walk to the grocery or the convenience store just about 5 minutes away to get my 2 Pepsi Maxes for the day to tide me over. So I am here to talk about irrational behavior and what cumulative findings we have so far. Now, my personal background is with the 10 years I spent with PepsiCo, 8 of those with Frito-Lay, and I ran something called the Smart Learning Center. It's a 40,000 square foot facility. It's a grocery store basically on wheels. Inside of it are long gondolas, about 40 foot each, of which I can wipe out a Walmart pretty quickly when I come to change my product mix of things that I want to test. So in there are real shopping carts, and consumers go through and they shop. In the ceilings are the best cameras available of recording exactly what they've done and being able to zoom in and see exactly what they're looking at. And within then, that lab, we did lots and lots of experiments and continue to, PepsiCo does. And what was a piece of that was the Neuro lab. So within that, I had the opportunity to test things on a daily basis. So you can imagine in one day testing more than a neuroscientist, PhD student would collect in an entire dissertation. The amount of stimuli tested. My responsibility was shopper insights and anything related to pre-store, in-store, and post-shopping experience. So lots of packaging tested, lots of print circulars, and imagery used on merchandising, and that's what I focused on. So today I'm going to talk about something I can talk about publicly, which is a big study that was done last year in the US. I will say I am looking for Twitter followers. Marketing Brainology is my handle. Braino. I had to truncate my Twitter feed, but I do. As I travel around the globe doing talks, I tweet around different observations of in-store merchandising. I'm very visually stimulated myself, so I tweet about observations, and so follow me on Twitter, please. So imagine then now being able to do a piece of research that would go across an entire geography and ideally across the globe. So that's the aspiration for us across Popeye, is to get more of these globally funded, but to be able to watch people in their natural habitat. So this study intercepted 2,400 shoppers in their native habitat, otherwise known as their real grocery stores, and intercepted them and combined, I'm talking to Sarah, is to look at people's attitudes and their behavior, and that really is where we get to looking at what people say versus what they do. And when you're intercepting them in the real grocery store and having them have a discussion about and looking at their artifacts, what did they bring to the grocery store? What coupons, what circulars, what pre-work did they tell us they did? What was on that grocery list? Was there a written list or was it a mental list? And that probing, continuous probing to get basically what was listed, and then to try to get as much information out of them about that trip before they go into the store. Then let them roam around the store, buy what they're going to buy, and imagine 210 of them are going to have EEG caps on them, 64 sensors, little backpacks. I have Dr. Sands here, who's going to speak to us later. They did that portion of it with the eye tracking. So we have 4 cameras, 2 looking out, 2 looking in. So I have eye fixations. I have on average 31 minutes of 210 spokes. I have the broader 2,400. And so the combination of all of that gets us a pretty neat little irrational story. So as I mentioned, the pre-shop, then we let them, as they shopped, they came back, they checked out, we scanned the register receipt to see what they exactly bought, and then did an interview with them to find why certain magical categories and items appeared into the cart. So we went deeper. Things that were unplanned ended up in their cart. We wanted to go and find out the why. Why was it? And that's a rational behavior, to tell us why they bought what they bought after the fact. Why did you buy those little Debbie, Swiss rolls, or the cookies, or this or that? So things will magically appear into our carts, to the tune of about 76%. Even among our segment that was the most planned segment of shoppers, things magically appeared in the cart, to the tune of about 65% of them had something end up in their shopping cart that was not anticipated. We also captured every piece of secondary display and items in store that could possibly be triggering it. So archived within this database is a tremendous amount of photography in store. So, as I mentioned, we did the eye tracking and the EEG on 210 of these shoppers. The wealth of information in the eye tracking alone was tremendous. And I know eye tracking is not a new thing, but put together with the stated information put together with the EEG was just amazing. So what I'm going to focus on today is the positive emotional valence scores and some of the negative ones by category, and leave you with 12 principles that accumulates the body of knowledge that I've been exposed to, of which not all of it I can talk about. We focused on eye fixations, purchase fixation, and rejection fixation. I'm going to talk about eye fixation today and how it relates to categories and some of the conflict that we know goes on in this irrational space. So let me show you a real quick video. You might say is, wow, look at all that gear. They must have felt very, very uncomfortable as they were shopping. Well, the reality is we had one shoplifter and a couple that actually used the restroom with their gear on. So obviously we threw those respondents out. Dr. Sands is laughing. Because the stuff you see, so we know that their brains get a little activated right at the beginning as we're doing it, but we know that and we anticipate that, and then give them some time to calm down and then go through it. It's amazing how realistic it is. We did take those without the caps and compared their data to those with the caps, and so we found no significant differences in terms of their actual shopping behavior, what they were buying. I know I've done this before in the labs. I sent shoppers through years and years ago over a 4-week period and tried different things. And the amazing thing I found is how little people actually, I could not find other shoppers fixating on the gear. It's like when you see somebody who's severely disabled, sometimes you're like, I don't want it to look like I'm looking at them. So they literally don't look at these folks very much with this gear on, which I find amazing. All right, so we all know, and that's what we're going to spend our time over the next 2 days talking about, this complexity of how the brain is actually flipping between rational and emotional. I come from the field of insights. I've been in marketing research basically the last 15 or so years, and before that I was in healthcare research and trying to figure out why people do risky behavior. Now that in itself is a really fun topic for another day or at the happy hour. But what we've done in the field is spent so much of our time on rational thinking, going to focus groups, having people tell us what they think, and have them, then we moved to one-on-one interviews, and we said, well, we're gonna try to remove group bias and group think, and there's all kinds of biases in there still, because I'm acclimating to what I think you might want to hear, and I'm adjusting my behavior, but I don't know I'm doing that, but we know we're doing that. So moving to these new methods, implicit response, and the things that we'll hear about, and obviously the EEG are great, fantastic additions to our other methodologies. The main thing is about seeing the world in a new way. And I would recommend that the biggest difference I've learned over all these years is the world is very, very different. There are my pink glasses and my blue glasses. About 90% of everything tested, especially in this neuroscience world, is significantly different by gender. Those gender differences are even stronger than cultural differences. So it does matter the lens that I see the world, and it's an uncomfortable spot to say our brains are hardwired in a very different way. And there is nurture, and so we adapt as we go through, and certainly our brains get into a business world, we adapt, we have very similar behaviors as men and women, but innately we react to stimuli differently. And I have so much proof on that, so I just say, trust me on that. Not going to go into this because this is going to be covered by some of the other speakers, but basically we're going to be in that system one, that unconscious space. I had the pleasure last year to introduce Daniel Kahneman, who's about 78 now. If you've read his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a fantastic book. He's got a lot of really great thinking around this. And when you hear the experiments that have been done and how much the little tweaks that you can make in your stimuli and all using the senses and what it can do to change buying behavior and the way people act. So the dilemma really comes down is how do we decide between the donuts and the apple? I'm going to show you in a video how that comes to life in a real live situation. So let's see if I can get this to work, this video. Okay, so one thing that we do know is, watch the green. We do know from a distance the highest emotional valence score happens 50 to 100 feet away, higher than even the putting it in the cart. So this is a sweet little Debbie, is owned by McKee Foods down in Tennessee. And these are very fantastic products. I buy my 3 boys, but look at, she's eyeballing these donuts. 66% of people that touch the physical product actually buy the product, except for in this situation. This is called a walk away. I am guaranteeing this was not on our list, it was not a planned purchase, and this is a great use of a secondary display. But what happens, and what moves us into that irrational space, are what we would call the hedonic categories, those guilty pleasures. They do not make the list. So your most indulgent things do not make your written shopping list. They're up here in your mental list, and they're the things that you really, really would like to buy, but you know you maybe shouldn't buy. And there are strategies to work with those products. Promotional strategies, and I'll try to hit on a few of those, but we need to work with the reality that there's conflict, especially with the female shoppers around certain categories of what they should, but what they want to do. Now, when you state a score that we used in these intercepts based on stated things, was there were 3 categories that were top performers in terms of overall shoppability. This is what they said. We have carbonated soft drinks, condiments, and orange juices. Now, I will say that some of the reasons why these were top performing, easy to shop, is more to do with how they're arranged on the aisle and the things that the manufacturers have done to simplify the shopping experience. So they have common packaging structure, brand blocking that's clean. So I either have red block, I have the blue block, so it would be the Coke, the Pepsi, and they have the fridge packs, the 12 packs, the 6 packs, the bottles. And it's very common, it's very simple and easy to shop. Same with ketchup, mustard, they have very similar packaging structure. So I think that's been part of it. In orange juice, I can guarantee has spent lots of time figuring out how to do it right, because there was a period of time where they did not get it right, where they changed the packaging. A major manufacturer I won't name changed their packaging to remove icons and other things that were part of that package in the past. Bottom performers, frozen foods, health and beauty, and candy. Now, candy is been doing a lot since the study came out to really go and clean up the way that they sell candy. And I've seen stores in London, it looks very different the way candy is displayed in Europe than it is in the US. In the US, it's oversaturated, number of SKUs, a messy, packages don't line up so I can see them straight on. They're stacked up, so it's an overwhelming experience, not to mention all the shelf tags that we put on there to overstimulate the shopper and not make it an easy shopping experience. So now I want to spend time talking about how the brain, as you guys know, you would not be in this room unless you know some basic information, but basically we overstimulate the shopper. We give them way more information and we all compete for their attention. And I say we, the manufacturers, the retailers are competing with their store brands, so it's a constant barrage of information. And the efficiency of our brain is to remove unnecessary information and only see those things. So it's very habitual when you watch these shoppers as they're going through. They're in a trance because they have moved to that unconscious shopping experience so that they can make it efficient. And that 31 minutes, I would guess on average, is the same time, the same path through the store that have very, very similar behavior as we do for all of us with our patterns of behavior, like taking a shower, getting to work every day. We do it in a very remote way. Now, the majority of fixations are actually on rejected products, but that's just because our eyes are fixating on all of the different end caps of the products. All of this was taped millisecond by millisecond and categorized as they went through the store. What did they see? Which ones? And obviously those categories that are seen the most are the ones that have more displays in the store. So produce, a very large section in the store, obviously gets lots of attention. And so produce was the one that they looked at in terms of overall fixations by category, followed by salty snacks, which has on average 4 to 5 displays, at least in the US in grocery stores, carbonated soft drinks, dairy, and frozen foods. This doesn't mean that these are the categories that they were in love with the most. These are just categories that have lots of either physical space or they have lots of displays throughout. Now I'm going to talk about, there were 4 segments. The bargain hunter, we had the trick planner, we had the explorer, and I've lost one of those.
Time stressed.
Time stressed, of course. And that was based on their behavior, so that was a behavioral segmentation based on their attitudes, and we divided them up. Well, we know that explorers were the only of the 4 segments, the only one having a positive emotional valence score at the end of the day. They were the only ones that were positively enjoying that experience. But imagine that. This is the group that actually had the longest time in the store, the highest % impulse buys, the most weekly trips, the most satisfied. So this group is a gem. This is the group that we should be targeting to as marketers. Now I want to look at one video that shows a really excellent use of a secondary display. Definitely exhibits irrational behavior on her part, but successful win for a manufacturer and obviously the retailer. So she's eyeballing this, what is an animal cracker display. It's very thematic. It's in the baby aisle next to diapers, so we're trying to enhance that aisle by adding. And clearly not a planned item for her. The other thing, if you noticed, she actually eyeballed the one thing that did not fit. There was one package that did not belong. That's an insight there. And that's how we normally will do it, the one that has the contrast, physical contrast. So going through now, looking by category, these are now neuro engagement. This is how much your brain was working as it was processing. This doesn't mean, again, it's a positive experience, it's just, it was working harder. Beverages, even though they said that was the highest shoppability, most shoppable, beverages overall, which includes more than just the carbonated soft drinks, actually made the brain work. But think about all the categories we've introduced in the beverage category. So you have energy drinks, you have no caffeine, with caffeine. I have obviously all the different flavors that are available. So there's a lot that you have to kind of stay focused on to make sure you're getting the right thing within the beverage category. So that kind of makes sense. Canned goods too, in terms of I have with salt, the low salt.
Hi, I'm Daria, and I'm investigating as well emotions through the neuroscientific point of view. And I was thinking, just wanted to ask, how do you measure, basically, how do you define emotional value?
Yeah, that's a great question for Dr. Sands. It's a combination score, but I've seen it measured. I'm most familiar with neurofocus measurement, but I'm going to let Dr. Sands talk a little bit about that.
Well, a lot of it is...
Do you want to use the microphone?
Sure. A lot of the neural measures look at asymmetries between right and left frontal lobe. And there's a natural circuit that builds up related to your autonomic nervous system. So you're going to fly away from something or you're going to approach something. Left side tends to be more positive and right is negative. And it's seen in a lot of different measures in neurophysiology of the brain. And you see several of the companies that use it.
Thank you, Steve. Are there more questions? No? Okay.
Is fashion and shoes also a hedonic category?
You know, I am so excited that the space 2 is going to include clothing, because I would imagine when you talk about irrational behavior at its best is around some of those items, the things that I know I shouldn't buy but I really want.
Yeah.
And so I've got to believe, it's worked for years for us women that, because I always like to use it with my husband, like I have 2 pairs of shoes because I was saving him some money here. So the rational thinking that we've used, and then seeing how the brain is actually processing that information. And I know that has been explored, and so anybody here that knows those categories better, done some research, that'll be interesting for us to learn some more about that.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle, thanks. Okay, first speaker.